We're very excited to have Christy and Nikki here today, and they're going to talk about structured work systems, and then we're actually going to have the opportunity to make some for you guys to take back with you to your programs. So, without further ado.
All right, there we go. So several of your faces are very familiar, and so I just want to back up for just a second and tell you how we got here today. The last 2 years we've presented on evidence-based practices for children with autism and how to apply those for children who are deaf with additional disabilities. So we decided this year that why not just dive into one of those evidence-based practices and let you have the ability, and we'll talk about it, we'll talk about how you need to think about it, and then we'll do a make and take. So today we will spend our morning talking about structured work systems, what they're used for, how you can use them with your students, how they may be beneficial for your students, talk about some of the questions you need to think through, and then this afternoon you will get the chance to make different tasks and different systems to bring home. Sound good?
How many of you are familiar with structured work systems or independent work systems? So there's a few of you out there, so you'll be an awesome resource today as we break out and start developing some of our own materials. We might tap into how you've used them and different things that you've created. So please share.
And as you can see, we brought lots of stuff today, so it may seem a little chaotic, so just roll with us. We're teachers, we're flexible, we'll just have to roll. So I'm Christy Borders. I am a professor in the Deaf Education program at Illinois State for anyone who hasn't been here before. And according to my name tag, apparently I'm getting promoted in the next year. So yay, I made it. So you guys are stuck with me in Illinois. So, and this is Nikki Michalak, thank you. And this is Nikki Michalak.
I also teach for the university, but I also work for the other statewide grant that is in Illinois, ISTAC, which is the Illinois Statewide Technical Assistance Collaborative, formerly known as PBIS, IATAP, or the Illinois Autism Training and Technical Assistance Project, PEP, and that all kind of fiddled away over the past year, and we came back together as one large entity. So I provide technical assistance to teachers in schools, or I'm supposed to be. Haven't been in a school yet this year, so I'm hoping that will come along soon.
So I'm going to go ahead and just get us started. So what are structured work systems? A few of you are familiar with those. Structured work systems are considered an evidence-based practice for students with autism spectrum disorders. And so we're going to introduce this concept a little bit and then we'll get going. So basically, what makes structured work systems such a great intervention for kids, especially if you consider kids with autism, but even other kids with other complexities, this definitely helps out. How many of you use a planner? How many of you wouldn't go to a meeting if your phone didn't ding at you? Yeah, so a lot of us put structures in our own days to help us out. This is basically a way for us to introduce that same concept of how to structure not only a day, but a work task specifically for our students. And so structured work systems answer these 4 questions. It tells a student visually and through structured supports what work needs to be done, how much work needs to be done, because they love work, right? How does the person know when they're finished or when that task will be finished, and what does the person need to do next? And so if you think about your students with complex learning needs, do they need to know when that task is going to end?
Do you see a breakdown maybe in any of these areas for some of the students that you may be supporting?
No, your students just love to do work as long as you put it in front of them?
No behaviors?
Wow, you all have better students than I ever had. A lot
yes, back there.
I'm a consultant, but I go in and number one is always what work needs to be done and how much work needs to be done. But the second two are rarely known by the student.
Okay, so in your experience, students know the first two items, but they really don't know 3 and 4. So they may need some structures put in place to help them know how do I know when this is going to be finished, and what do I do after this? How many of you use visual schedules in your classrooms? Probably most, well, not most. Wow, I'm a little surprised. So several of you use visual support. So this is, a lot of this structure is going to seem very similar to that, but we're going to remember that this all comes back to work. And there's some real benefits to that. This system is entirely organized by visual cues. The point about structured work systems, what makes it such a great intervention, is that it is not designed to be reliant on adult prompting. Show of hands, how many of you have a student that you would consider prompt reliant? Yeah. Okay, so the one study that I continue to go back to and back to and back to was the study that really started the evidence base for structured work systems. It was done by Kara Hume, H-U-M-E, was her dissertation study where she did structured work systems with 3 individuals with autism. And what is so cool about her study was not only did it show an increase in productivity by the student, it showed a decrease in adult prompting. So she measured both of those things. Wow, those are both great outcomes for our students, right?
Independence. When a student can complete a task on their own without teacher support, huge. It's a wonderful thing, a wonderful skill that they're going to use lifelong.
And so often for our students, they are very reliant on adult prompting to get through their day. And so this is one time period in their day that they can work completely independently. And that can also lead to some nice social outcomes for students. And so that's kind of our intro to
Are any of
structured
you
work
struggling
systems.
right now with students that may be prompt reliant? That they're prompt reliant either on a teacher, on a teaching assistant, or other supports? People? So hopefully today we'll be able to give you some ideas, and when you leave, you'll be able to think of different ways that you might be able to support that student so that they are more independent in completing some of their tasks. That's one of our goals.
Definitely. And that's one of the reasons why when we had to think about which evidence-based practice can we start with, this is a good one to start with. If you needed to pick one evidence-based practice, this is an easy one that you can come to a make and take, walk away with some ideas, and it might result in student independence. And we love that. So this is just some background. Structured work systems are part of the Teach Center. You guys might have heard of that. If not, definitely look it up. It's capital T-E-A-C-C-H. It's in North Carolina. It's actually where Kara Hume, my favorite structured work system researcher, went to work. So they're doing great work at Teach. They have been since the 70s. And so structured work systems were put in place very early and have been used since the 70s. So what's pretty incredible is that it wasn't established as an evidence base until in the last 14 months. And so now it is, and we celebrate that. Here are some characteristics of your students that may be addressed through structured work systems.
So a lot of these are characteristics of students with an autism spectrum disorder, but I'm guessing a lot of them also may be very familiar with some of the students that you may be supporting currently. So they may have a relative strength and preference for processing visual information. When we take a look at the research on individuals with an autism spectrum disorder, what is your guess about the percentage of those students who are visual learners? Do you think it's lower, like 30 or 40%, or do you think it's higher, like 80 or 90%? Higher? Does anybody want to take a guess at what that percentage is? 80 to 90? 92% of individuals with an autism spectrum disorder are visual learners. And so that auditory component is actually their weakest link. And so when we can provide that information to them visually, it's concrete, it's not transparent, and so it stays there, and they're able to take in and process that information so much better.
You add deafness on top of that, what just happened to that percentage?
Woo!
Yeah, we're pretty much talking about 100% of our kids here. And so we have to be visual. We know that that's a characteristic of deafness alone and autism alone. So when you combine those two, or you combine deafness with an intellectual disability, we have to get visual. And in this system, it's going to be a visual that does not go away. Most of you have been here for the last 2 years and we've talked about this, but there's a reason that we talk about visuals that don't go away. Sign is great, guys. I'm not going to say sign isn't great, but sign goes away. So if you sign to a student and you say, okay, here are the 3 things we're going to do today, and then that goes away, they can no longer answer questions 2, 3, and 4 that we talked about on the first slide. So we're going to really make that schedule and that structure stay in place, because they're going to reference, re-reference, re-reference, re-reference. So that's just one of the characteristics that this intervention will address.
And another thing, talking about sign, how many of you have been very successful teaching sign to students with autism as their main communication tool or modality? Seeing some kind of typically what we find is the fine motor skills for students with autism are really, really poor. And so it's very difficult for them to properly create signs. And so when they're communicating, they may only have one person to communicate with who understands what that sign means, because it's typically an approximation and not a true sign. And so if they were to ever go out into the community and use their sign, it's not going to be recognized. They're never going to be a part of the deaf community. And so that sign is not always going to be functional for them, besides the 3 or 4 people that they typically interact with. So visuals work. So another characteristic is frequent attention to detail, very specific attention to detail, but difficulty understanding how all of the different components may fit together.
So these are your kids with part to whole kinds of things. They may see sections of learning, but they're not sure how all those details fit together. These are also your kids who hang their hat on irrelevant features of things. So they may think that a cup is defined by the blue stripe around it, not the actual fact that it holds a liquid. That's that characteristic that is very common across kids with additional intellectual disabilities or autism spectrum disorders. And that's one of those characteristics where if you get very structured, it helps them pay attention to the feature that you want them to pay attention to.
So oftentimes they may learn that big concept, but we need to really break it down into certain steps so that they can chain those back together to learn that larger skill. So we call them just fault learners. They may have difficulty combining ideas, especially when those ideas are abstract. So if there's any level of abstractness and it's not concrete information, there could be a huge breakdown in how they're processing and taking in and then responding to that information. Another area, and we're going to go into this one a little bit deeper, is difficulty with organizing. So that's a characteristic of kiddos with an autism spectrum disorder. How many of the students that you are supporting do you also see a breakdown with organization? A decent amount. Oh yeah? You see it? I have that problem in my own house at times. So there could be difficulty with organizing tasks and ideas, materials, and activities. Difficulties with attention. Anybody see that? Globally glaring.
Global, I think that's pretty present.
Exactly. And then obviously with all disabilities, communication. There's communication breakdowns, there's communication difficulties, and often we have a difficult time identifying a formal means of communication for students with autism or who have comorbid things going on, just because we need to find out what is that functional system going to be for that student, what's going to meet that student's needs. So, some other things that we could see would be difficulty with concepts of time, especially elapsed time. That seems to be a very difficult abstract concept for students to grasp. It could be including moving too quickly or moving too slowly, having problems recognizing the beginning, middle, and ends of activities. And so that's why we're going to go into some ideas around structured teaching of how we can really tighten that up and structure it up for a student.
We see a lot of our students, and I just would love a nod or some sort of visual feedback for myself. How many of your kids would you consider rigid? Okay, you're seeing a lot of rigidity. That is something that sometimes we want to step away from routines that are very set, right? Because they really attach themselves to that routine. And if something breaks that routine, we all know what happens. Not your favorite behavior day, right? Picture day, worst day of the year. That's all I'm saying.
Snow
Horrible.
days. We've had a few of those lately.
You guys may
Totally messes with the routine.
may have some difficult behavior tomorrow after your students are back after a couple days being off. And so that rigidity is something that you can actually help work on with structured work systems. Once you get them able to use a structured work system, you can use it to break that rigidity. I had a student that I worked with in the autism clinic that was deaf with autism, and we used to, just to help him learn some coping strategies, his drawers didn't always go in numerical order.
She sabotaged.
You can sabotage independent work systems, and you should.
It's a teaching opportunity.
And so his drawers weren't always 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes he had to do 5 first, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1, and then 4.
Or you'll see the student who is so rigid, even though it's not in order, they will go out of the order that it's in just because that's the routine that they're used to. We're also going to just to jump ahead, preview what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about schedules. And so using schedules are another way to build in flexibility, to step away from some of that rigidity. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. Another characteristic would be tendency to become attached to routines, with the result of activities being difficult to generalize from the original learning. So generalization is such a huge thing. We can teach a task in a certain environment with one person, but if we don't plan how that skill is going to be used with a different person in a different setting, if we don't teach that, we failed, because that skill is not going to be used. So when we think about what it is that we're teaching, we need to plan how we're going to use, how the student will use that skill in the different environments with different people. So we have to also teach that. How many of you have a student who might be very interested in certain objects, may have a strong preference for certain things? Yes? What are some of their special interests? Mr. Potato Head. Hey, I think we have Mr. Potato Head here.
Oops. Today.
Jellyfish. I have never heard of that one. Trains is a huge one.
Tornadoes.
SpongeBob.
Had a couple tornado kids.
Legos. Absolutely.
Roller coaster.
So what do you do with those special interests? Do you try to minimize them, or do you use them as a teaching tool? Or reinforcement. Absolutely. So we'll talk about how you can use them both as reinforcement and as teaching tools in some of our examples later.
And then we know that our kids, whether they are deaf with a cognitive impairment or deaf with another additional disability or deaf with autism, they may have marked sensory preferences and dislikes. And that's something that we can incorporate, again, within structured work systems. So kind of all of the things that we've talked about for 2 years, this is a good intervention to kind of try to combine all of those things together.
What's really cool is we have done a change in the DSM, and I think we talked about this last year because the proposed new DSM was just being rolled out. And what they had done is they added in the sensory challenges for students with autism, because I personally, and I'm sure most of you who have worked with a kiddo with autism, has yet to meet a student who was not impacted some way sensory-wise. And so that's something that's really good that has been now included in the diagnostic criteria for an autism spectrum disorder, is that there is definitely a significant sensory impact on their system, which is very similar to students who have other needs going on.
I know you all are familiar with the term executive function, so you can probably easily see the connection between something like a work system where we're teaching students to work through a task independently and executive functioning skills. So executive functioning is that ability with kids to plan and sequence. And so if we can structure that out for them, how do you make it through a task, then we're able to teach executive functioning skills.
Organization is huge, predicting is huge. I think that goes on right to the next slide of where it could really break down. So it's also defined as the way that people monitor and control their own actions, their own emotions, and their own behavior. It's kind of like that frontal lobe processing, how we go about our days, and it's what helps us get through how we're navigating everyday things. And so that's a huge area that a lot of our students have a very difficult time with.
Which are reflected in those core deficits that are listed here. So inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility. Wow, we've got some really cognitively inflexible students.
As we just talked about, rigidity.
And that's something that we see that's related to a deficit in executive functioning. And so we just wanted to make the point that before we throw a bunch of materials at you, why we're throwing these materials at you and how you may be able to use them. Here are some of the major areas that students struggle with that could be addressed. Predicting, so that what's coming next kind of thing. Organization, working memory, and how to use what you've got stored in your memory. Again, inhibitory control, flexibility, and that management of time. How many of you have a snail student? Yeah, okay. They're fun, aren't they? So this is a way, use your visual timer with each task, and you can try to teach that time management. By the way, I'm gonna take a total side. I'm gonna take a total. I saw my favorite time management intervention in the entire world, and you should recommend it to every parent of a snail student. It's the shower timer. Have you seen it? No. It's like foam, and it suction cups to your wall of your shower, and it's 5 minutes. And so you tell students they can only flip it once. So they have to get out before 10 minutes in the shower. Do you think those parents have struggled with the snail student? Yeah. They're probably having to wake up that child very early in the morning to make it through routines. So the shower timer is great for shower kids, but also for any other activity in which they need the visual. It's very, very visual, but it can also hang in a shower.
Where do you get that from?
Right? I love it. I'm going to have to look at where we found those.
That's really cool.
It's the best thing. I need one for my own children.
Yes. Are there any characteristics here that are standing out for you that you're like glaring, oh yeah, this is one of the kiddos that I'm working with right now that needs a lot of support in that area? Yeah?
Good. Because we don't want time management to end like this.
And we've all been in that situation.
We don't want to miss the boat. We don't want them to miss the boat. So there you go. We've kind of talked through several of these, and I'm not going to read. You all can all read. But here are some benefits of these work systems for particularly complex learners. The biggie, our primary goal for all school-age students is an increase in independence skills. And sometimes we get so focused on the academic tasks that we have to teach and all of these spring assessments and all of that stuff that it's easy to forget that independence is the end all goal for our students. And so today, for 20 minutes, you can refocus on that and then go back to all of the beautiful tasks that you have to do, especially in spring semester. But independence is the primary benefit of these structured work systems and fluency with skills. This is all about mastered skills, which
we'll talk about when we go into how to implement a structured work system. The other thing I wanted to say about independence is, how long do we have our students for? Anywhere between the ages of 18 and 22. And so oftentimes, if we have that prompt dependency that we have been talking about already, and we have not done the best job teaching independence, what's going to happen when they're 22 and age out of the system? What are the settings? Where are our students going to go? Because they're now adults. Where are the adults going to go, and what is it that they're going to be doing? What does it look like? What are some of the options in the communities that you guys live in? Sheltered workshops. What else? Nothing. Staying home with mom and dad. Going to a day program. And so I think that's one of the main reasons that hitting independence is so important, because we need to prepare our students for when they leave our school system. Because we don't want them going to a sheltered workshop where they're really not going to be using the skills that they have. And so when we can break it down and we can teach a student to do something independently, at home, at school, in their job, these are all skills that they're learning that they're going to take with them, so that they don't have to be reliant upon another person to get them through that task. And so independence is such an important skill. And I think probably one of the most important skills that we really need to instill and teach them how to do.
The other thing that these structured work systems allow you to do is to provide additional opportunities to practice mastered skills. So the thing about structured work systems is nothing goes in an independent work system until it's independent. So you don't put things in that structured work system that you haven't first taught, so that they can be successful with.
Everything that goes in there, it has to be at a maintenance level. So it has been taught in direct instruction over and over, repetition and repetition, until it's at that 80% maintenance level, that they are completing it pretty much independently, and then you put it into that structured work system. And we'll talk about it first. It might be something really simple. It might be a line where they're, depending on the student and what they're working on. For one student, it might be a line and have them writing their first name. The goal of a structured work system is not the work that is in the system. It is them going through that system independently, going and completing each task on their own, finishing the work task, that's number one, putting it wherever it needs to go, moving on independently to complete a second task, completing the work, putting it in the done basket or where it needs to go, moving on, doing another task. So following a schedule and completing things independently without any staff support. And so that's truly our goal, because then we can generalize that skill into any environment. We can take it to the home. We can use it to teach play skills, leisure skills. We can use it in a job setting. And so it does a phenomenal job teaching a student to be independent.
And that, of course, is going to lead to positive self-esteem as well. So if a child can do a task without being told all the time what to do, and they can finish a task completely by themselves, that may result in a positive self-esteem.
They're successful. Who doesn't love when they do something on their own and they're successful? It's such a great feeling, and you can see it on their faces that they're so excited.
They do love working through independent work systems, no doubt. This is another one, this second to bottom bullet, that I find that when I have put these in place in the classroom or the clinical setting, that this is the one 20-minute period where there's not an adult constantly placing demands on your students. So it can actually be a very calming time for students.
Tell your example about the implants.
So one of the first children that I worked with extensively, severe autism, and profoundly deaf. Worked with him in the autism clinic at Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And he would always go to his independent work system and sit down, and the first thing he did was turn off his implants. It was like his 20 minutes to sit here, not have to hear every other stemming child in my classroom, and to be able to just turn it all off and work on something that he could do completely independent. It was the calmest that child ever was during his day. And then independent work would finish, he'd hand me his I'm finished card, go over to his schedule, and he'd flip him right back on. He's ready. But for those 20 minutes, he just wanted to be able to work how he wanted to work and finish his tasks. And so for me, I've seen a lot of the calming impact of independent work systems. So I love them.
For other students that may not have that same opportunity to turn their hearing off, there's lots of other physical supports that we can put in, boundaries that we can put in that would help minimize distractions. Because a lot of our students are like a squirrel, and if something walks by or if a light flicks or somebody says something, their attention from that task has changed to whatever else is going on. So we'll talk about different ways that we can structure the physical environment so that we can help minimize those distractions so students are able to continue doing their work. So more benefits would be maintaining engagement with tasks when they're not directly receiving that instruction. So like we said, the student already knows the task. We just want to make sure that they can do it independently. And so this is a great way to remove them from that environment so that they can show and be successful doing the skills that they have already learned.
And as is our nature, we've already talked about the points on this slide. Yep, that's what we do. We get excited and we start talking, and then I'm reading these and going, oh yeah, we've already talked about how you can put this
lifelong, because you know it can go home, it can go into the job.
Sorry about that.
But again, it goes back to, and I know we've hit this, it truly does address characteristics of all students. It's not necessarily for a student who is deaf or who has a hearing impairment. It's not necessarily only for a student with autism. It could benefit any child at any level. And so it's just a great teaching tool that we can use for all of our students.
It can also benefit your classroom environment on a whole. So if you think about your classroom and some of the things that happen in your classroom, this actually allows you the chance for student A to work independently so that you can work with students B, C, and D for a bit, and then they transition. So this just becomes one of the stations in your classroom, allowing a teacher a little bit more flexibility in terms of who can I work with during this time, because that student, once they're trained on a system, can be independently working. So, and boy, we never need more time with students, right? So it's actually going to benefit you as a teacher as well, and it actively engages them in learning and in task completion without you having to be there. And so I think it's just a win-win. And you can train your paraprofessionals in your classroom to monitor that station in your classroom. It's relatively easy. If you have peer mentors in your classroom, you can use them as well to teach and monitor the independent work system. So it should require minimal monitoring and prompting from an adult. If they require constant adult prompting to make it through their independent work system, you got to take a few steps back.
It's not independent, and it was not a skill that was ready to go into that system.
Right. Once you've taught the system.
But it also allows you to use your support in your classroom, all the extra bodies, differently. Because if you have students who are doing independent things, then you can use your paraprofessionals and your TAs in a different capacity. So it allows the dynamic of the classroom to run a little bit more effectively because people get to do different things.
So I don't know how many of you, when you write transition plans, how many of your students are going out and doing vocational training?
Anybody?
Okay, so the few of you who have kids on that end of the age spectrum, where you're really thinking vocationally, you're thinking about What do I need to put in place for my student to be successful in their job? Many of you probably recommend job coaches, correct? Yeah, job coaches. Well, this is one of the things that you can put in place so that you can use a job coach in the way that that job description is actually written.
How many of you have ever, and this is nothing against job coaches, but how many of you have ever been a job coach, or how many of you have ever shadowed what that might look like? Oftentimes it's the job coach who is providing a lot of support, sometimes doing the job for the student. Did it look differently in your experience?
No, it was just a summer job. I was just there to supervise, but they honestly did a lot of the things independently.
Awesome. So that means they set it up well. There's some instances where it's not done so well, and it's not anyone's fault. It's a lack of training and a lack of knowledge on how support should be provided. And so when we can set up these systems for a student to complete their jobs independently, it's awesome. It's awesome to watch. I got to go into a school and visit a kiddo who he worked in the lunch area cafeteria with all of the lunch ladies, and he had like 5 or 6 different tasks by the end of the first semester that he had done, but it didn't start off that way. But he was able to really be a significant help in that job setting because we put his visuals, we gave him a schedule in the different areas of things that he was doing. He had task organizers or mini schedules that let him know what it was that he was supposed to do. And so his time started off in there as probably 20 minutes, but he ended up being in there for the 2 full hours. And then we transitioned him to a different job because he needed to learn new skills.
Now I'm going to get on a mom soapbox. And most of you are maybe parents in here. But if you put an independent work system in place in your classroom, you better be talking to mom and dad or parent or guardian about how they can use that same system in their home. Because if you're struggling to get them to do something at school, I guarantee the parents can list out 5 to 10 things they're struggling with to get their kid to do at home.
And the cool thing is if we can find out from parents what those big glaring things are, if they can prioritize 3 different things that would make their life easier, and we could teach it at school because sometimes it's easier when it's not taught by mom and dad. We get it set in one environment and then we generalize that same system to the home. Guess what? It works really well. And I've had a lot of success. One of the big areas that parents struggle with is teeth brushing and grooming. And so we've spent an entire year desensitizing and getting kiddos ready to brush their teeth. But then we transfer that same system into the home environment, and they're very, very successful. Another area that parents have often said they would like their kiddos to work on is being independent cooking, making their own snacks after school, getting their breakfast ready, and even making their own lunch. So if we can set up systems like that at school to teach how to, follow recipes and how to cook, we can then transfer it at home, and it decreases the stress of whatever it is that's going on at home.
So sometimes many of you may sit here today and think, well, my kid's not low enough to need an independent work system, right? My kid, we mostly work on academic tasks. Academics is where we focus. My kid doesn't need to learn how to sort silverware. I would just ask you to have that conversation with mom and dad, because sorting silverware is an independent lifelong skill, right? And so sometimes we have to really open back up again. So this is your 20 minutes to process that, right? We're going to go back to independence. And what do you hope and dream and wish, not only you, but those parents, when this kid is 22? If you want them to live independently, they have to know how to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They have to know how to do laundry. They have to know all of those functional skills. And something as simple as a structured work system can teach them to organize skills. Once they're in those higher levels, ready to transition, you can teach students how to set up their own systems. So when they do get their own apartment, they understand that, okay, in order for mail not to be intimidating for me, I need to set up a system, just like Christy set up for me in my classroom. So I need one for mail that I need to do something with, and mail that I can ignore, mail with windows. We talk about mail with windows a lot, right? Mail with windows, it's important. That's probably a bill. Don't throw away mail with windows, right? So mail with windows is an important task. So those kinds of things, I just encourage you, if you're struggling with thinking about a task that may fit in these, as we move on to the discussion about task, might need to think outside the threshold of your classroom and think about the goals that this parent or these sets of parents or guardians may have for your students. Right now, before we take a break in a few minutes, and then we'll move on to setting this up and thinking about how to do it, you all are here in teams, correct?
Are you sitting with your teams? Sorta? Kinda?
Okay, if you can gather with your teams, this is what we would like for you to do today. Because this is a make and take. I don't want it to be meaningless for you. I want you to leave here as a team thinking through one or two kids that you think fit what we were talking about this morning. So I want you to gather around that kid. Think about where they're at, present levels, what kinds of abilities, what kinds of goals would you have for them, what kinds of skills, so that we can help you think through what kinds of tasks may be meaningful for that student or what might be helpful.
Where does the student break down? What are the struggles that you're seeing for the student?
One more thing, and I know we haven't talked about this, so just go with it, is their level of abstraction. How much structure do they need in place to understand what's coming, what just happened? What's their level of abstraction? Are they, if they're on a schedule, are they on an object schedule?
Or are they on a written schedule?
Or do they not have a schedule because you're thinking, I can just five-finger it out and they get it? Okay, so what level of abstraction is that student at? Because that is going to be your base for how you're even going to set up your system to begin with. Make sense? Okay, so get with your teams. We have a few minutes and then we get to have a break. Sound good? All right.
Pack and stack.
I just want to take the chance to show you all just some examples of what some of these systems look like. So if you look in the top left picture, and you'll see some consistencies across all of these pictures, but on the left-hand side of that desk, you'll see three numbers, 30, 12, and 26. And you see what those correspond to, right? The tasks at the top of the desk.
So those three different icons on the side that have the numbers, that's called a task organizer. So what that does is it allows the student to sit down, they grab the first one, which is 30, and they either match it, they'll put it, there might be a Velcro spot, well they'll pull it off and they'll match it to the 30 on the shoebox, they'll pull it down and do that task. And then they'll put it in an all done spot that the teacher has already taught them where it is.
And in that picture, the all done spot is that laundry basket.
Laundry baskets are amazing.
So this is
So many uses.
So many. So this is kind of how this works. So you'll see they'll match those numbers in that top left picture and then it goes in the laundry basket for I'm done. On the right hand side, you can see that those bins are just with color matching. So in this right picture over here, it goes green, yellow, red. That's also good for kids who understand that stoplight analogy, right? They know, and this is able visually to show them how much work do I have to do and when will it be finished. It shows them visually, okay, I'm 1 out of 3, I'm getting there. And then they're all done, finished bin is down on the floor. It's just a little box with a sign for I'm finished in the bottom of that. And then this bottom picture shows 2 separate independent work system stations for students. Again, you'll see the task on the left We always organize left to right, right? Correct. Not right, correct. We always go left to right because that's the way that our culture works. And the tasks are on the strip to the left, the tasks are at the top. In all these pictures, they don't have to be that way. We'll get to that. But this is just some examples, laundry baskets again for finished.
Another thing is you see different work areas here. That does not need to be student specific. So that area could be used by multiple students, and you could just switch out the tasks and what that task organizer may look like so that it's appropriate for that student. So you can use that same area for multiple students.
Okay, so many of you already use visual schedules, but we really can't jump into how to organize this until we talk a little bit about visual schedules, because they're very connected to one another. So we're going to start with some visual schedules. So many of you already do this, but a visual schedule is just, it's very important for structuring that environment again. And it overviews the activities that are going to happen and in what order they're going to happen. So seriously, if my iPhone does not ding at me, I will not show up for a meeting. No offense, it will not happen. I'm that scatterbrained.
It tells you where to go
and when.
And when you need to be there.
Right? So this is just a more concrete version of that for our students. It shows them exactly what order they're going to be doing their tasks in. And the schedule compensates again for those deficits in executive functioning and any language processing. If they working memory can't hold on to those 7 steps that you just gave a student, then you have to make it visual and concrete. And this happens a lot. I think we get asked constantly, well, can't we just go ahead and remove the schedule?
He's doing it on his own.
He's completely independent with that schedule. He doesn't need a schedule. Well, how many of you would be willing to hand me your planners when you walk out of this room today? You all use them independently, right? Just like the arguments that we hear regarding not using a schedule with a student. It's, we would all probably have a little bit of anxiety if someone took away our schedule, especially those of you who are itinerants. Do you even know where you're going tomorrow? Yeah, I know how that is. So a lot of kids look like they don't need a schedule, but don't be fooled by that. And just think about it could be too much or too little or too low or too high. And
so it might be something that we just need to adapt a little bit. If it's not necessarily working for the student, that doesn't mean that we should not use it. We just might need to tweak it a little bit so that it fits the student's needs.
It's also important to consider the appropriateness of a schedule. I think the other error that I see a lot is we get kids on a schedule, maybe it's very concrete, maybe very little abstraction, and we forget that we need to move them into less abstraction, higher level skill. So our schedules could just be a list. That's how we function for the most part, right? Or it could be on an electronic handheld device. So many of our students prefer to use that. It's socially appropriate. That's something that can easily move from environment to environment. So just don't get stuck in visual schedule has to mean board maker icons on a Velcro strip. It can mean that, but it doesn't have to mean that.
And how many students in junior high and high school have cell phones with them now? Pretty much everybody. And so opening up an Outlook calendar for them as to inputting in what class they have is a really helpful way to do it. And then what we've done for a lot of students, because that schedule planning also contains a notes area, you can go in and you can enter more information like what the homework was for that class. And so it serves a dual purpose when you're using the technology. They have lots of different additional things that you can add in and use.
And to-do lists, that's just another example of a schedule. Nick?
So, how many of you in classrooms that you have worked in or in classrooms that you have used class-wide schedules, so one schedule for everybody in your classroom. That's a great strategy, a great support. It outlines what everybody can see. It refers throughout the day. Sometimes they include time. Sometimes it includes more information about the activities and where different students need to be. And I've even seen them where the TAs or the teaching assistants or support in the classroom are also paired up so people know where they're supposed to be and who they're supposed to be working with. So it's posted for everyone, and these are just some examples of what that might look like. Sometimes they might be the icons or pictures. Sometimes it's just a written schedule based on the needs of the students in your classroom.
And for those of you who do have you wish that they would install the rotating door on your classrooms, right? Because you have 1 million people in your classrooms in the course of one day. Because I'm a little bit of a squirrel person, I need a schedule that says this interpreter is with this student during this period and this period. It tells everybody where to go and when that needs to transition. And you can use that. Don't only think about these as a support for your students, because frankly, in our jobs, we need schedules that are very clear for all of the different adults who are walking in and out of our classrooms. When is speech coming again, and what time, and which kid, and who goes to OT? And
I was talking to a teacher yesterday who said that was one of the big areas that he was struggling with. Is he was in his 3rd or 4th year of teaching, and he felt like he got all the kid stuff down, all the different adapting and modifying curriculum, but he was really struggling with I think he had 5 or 6 bodies in his classroom, additional teaching assistants, volunteers, and supports. And so he actually needed to create a schedule to help him organize that physical environment so he knew who was working with who was doing what with what student at what time. So schedules aren't only beneficial for the students in our classrooms, but they're also helpful just to make sure that that classroom dynamic is going to run smoothly. Question?
Everybody in color, so that every student has their own schedule on their desk, and depending on what color that item is, tells them who they're working with.
I've seen that very similarly, where they'll have the teaching assistants used as instruction to provide instruction, and so they'll each have an area within the classroom. So it might be blue, and blue means reading, so you're going to go work with that teaching assistant in that area, which I think is a great tool, because then we're not necessarily hooking up one student with one aide, that they get to work with lots of different people. So that focuses on skill generalization. It helps with that prompt dependence, so it's not created. So I think that's a wonderful idea. Yes?
The same thing, like you were talking about that teacher never knowing who has OTPT gym. My kids have 3 different gym classes, 3 different art classes, and they're everywhere all the time, and I have no clue who's where, when, and so I just posted a schedule with all the pull-out times on my door, and I gave it to all of the students at the beginning of the year, and I said, find your name, highlight your name, check your schedule. So that I've done a million different ways of trying to let them know when you have OT, when you have PT, when, I have like flip things that every day of the week we flip to a new chart, but then if somebody changed their schedule, then try to make sure I change that or whatever. Now I have the kids responsible for it. They ask me, I'm like, check your schedule, and a lot of them do every morning still. They come in and look at their schedule to see what they have, so it's really given them the ownership of that independence too.
Good. So you've been able to incorporate some other skill instruction. And it is hard. I mean, schedules, especially, I'm just going to say it, deaf educators have the hardest job in the world. And the amount of people and the rotation that happens in our classrooms is unlike any other teacher. In special ed, definitely. But DHH even more, I think. Because our interpreters and paraprofessionals, and God forbid if you take one of our students, thank you, thank you, thank you. Then you have that whole aspect of college students coming in and out, and it just becomes very, very complicated. Yes, ma'am?
When there's a change in the schedule, the teacher is in the field time. The teacher will stick on the board and say what's different.
Yep.
Yeah, so a yield sign is a perfect way, if there's something that's going to change, having a yield sign. We used to put a picture of a bomb on our schedules, like, gonna drop a bomb on you today, but the art teacher's absent, or the SLP isn't gonna be here today, or...
But it's an awesome way to teach flexibility, because we do know that rigidity is such an inherent issue that a lot of our students struggle with, that using a schedule is one of the first ways that you can introduce change and teach flexibility.
And so you guys have already brought us onto this, but class-wide schedules are that group intervention, and then there are daily schedules. So that tells that individual person, like you were just saying, you make the student responsible for that. So the individual student's daily schedule tells them again what activities and in what order, and helps them answer these questions: where do I go and what's next? That what's next is because they don't like to be bombed, right? I want to know what my day is going to be. I need predictability. And if they have autism plus deafness, that's a neurological thing. That's not just them being stubborn, guys. It's a brain-based disorder. It's difficult for them to organize themselves, and they need to know what's coming next. And when they don't, what does it result in?
What do you see?
Behavior. Huge bursts of behavior.
That's not to say our students aren't stubborn, but it just shows the breakdown in communication. And so what they have left to use is their communication, or their behavior, which equals communication.
And it can be as simple as a first then on the bottom, or as complicated as a checklist that's going to come down like your top. Helps with transitions and changes, and is very dependent on individual students, and we hope will lessen that anxiety.
So one schedule that you create for one student may not work for the next student. It may have to look very, very different. So we're going to talk about what those different types of schedules may look like briefly. Yes?
So when using the first then, do you use it in addition to your daily schedule? So would you take, we have, 15 things happening in one day.
What I would do is, it depends on the student. How much information can they take? Because if 15 items on that schedule causes way too much anxiety and way too much stress, I'd bracket it down to just a first then. And then you can build in, so maybe that it's 3 items. First you have this, then you have this, and you can build your reinforcement right into that schedule so they can see what's going to happen.
So you use that as your daily.
I would use that. If there's a student who has that need, I would start off with a first then, just very basic. Or you can have your schedule be very broad, but then when you focus in on what that activity is, you might say first reading, then playtime or relax time or whatever it is, and then another activity. So you break it down. And with a first then, typically the way the first then works is that you have your activity or higher demand task that you want them to do, followed by a reinforcer or some type of reinforcement. So it shows them, first I do my work, then I get my reinforcer. So you can pair it with the larger daily schedule. And for some students, you might not want to have all 15 items. You might want to say just an AM. So you might want to have just a morning schedule, and then when the morning's done, it goes away and you pull out the afternoon schedule. Yeah.
How do you then transition from the then to the first again? Yeah.
You can build it right into your schedule so that then you can have it. So you can do just the first then, so you have your 2 items, and then you can transition it. You can do it horizontal or vertically, where it would just be, then maybe you'll add your 3rd task onto what that schedule looks like. So you slowly add in another activity or event that's going to happen.
And I think you're asking, so they did reading, and now they get to play, so how do you get them to this next thing? Yeah. Right? And so what you're going to do is, they've done this, and now they're playing, and then you're going to show them another first then. Does that make sense?
So first we're playing, and then we're going to.
Or you can have all 3 up there,
Shuffle them.
and you can have it close, so you can have it close over when it's done. You can have the student close it over so that then they see that it's done, and they see what's next. So I think there's a couple of examples in here of what that might look like a little flip over. Like you can take a manila elephant.
Manila elephants, I love them.
folder,
funny.
envelope, no. And you just cut it so that it's a done flab, tab, flab.
I better move us. We're gonna get stuck.
Let's go on.
We're gonna get stuck on the elephant.
So here are some examples. You can do that. And it
room.
also depends on what the student likes for closure. Is it just a check off that they need, like this one? Can they have all information on there at one time, which may be really overwhelming for some students? Or is it, I do it and then I move it over? So it's a Velcro.
One of those, the first and then finished and then first and then finished. A lot of times, the physical movement of something from the task that you're working to being finished is
Closure.
is very important. That actually means now it's actually done. And it's not done until I move that thing for most of those kids who need that.
And it might be
so-
just on that schedule, but for some students it might be, I'm taking that icon, I'm traveling across the room, and I'm putting it in a finished box. So it's done, it's over, they go back to see what's next.
And so here are some, this is what my classroom always looked like. I had a stationary spot for my students, and every kid was a different color because we're teachers and we color code everything. And then you can really individualize what is gonna be on every kid's schedule. So it can be stationary, or for kids that are able to move on, you can move it into that portable schedule that they carry with them throughout the areas of the school or their
This
classroom.
picture, can you go back really quick? This picture of the stationary schedule is not the most clear, but what you would see if you could see it very clearly is some of those are icons, black and white icons. Some are color pictures, actual digital pictures. There's a student on there that's using an object schedule, and we'll talk about object schedules a little bit more in a moment. So it's very individualized to meet that student's specific needs at that level of abstraction that they need to be able to independently go through that system.
And so just real quick, and this is gonna not only relate to those schedules, but also the kinds of things you'll think about with structured work systems are how you select the format that would be meaningful. And so again, here are some of those, some that go horizontally, some that, really horizontally, some that go vertically, some that are just paper, pencil, cross them off. But we always have to think about that level of abstraction. So on this slide, you'll see that these are listed from needing more concrete to the most abstract at the bottom. And you have to figure out, where is your student? And I know I asked you guys that question before break. Some of you might have been able to run with that. Some of you might be like, what the heck is Borders talking about? And that's fine. We're gonna take you there right now in terms of the format. So it can either be real objects, which some kids really need that level to understand what's coming next, photos, and I will even tell you that we break down photos into color photos and black and white photos. And then we do icons or line drawings with words, without words.
They're more abstract.
Kinds of levels. And then lastly, just the written word.
And oftentimes when I'm doing schedules, I'll also pair some of those two together. So I might have an object, but I might, as the student begins to learn that system and I see that they're doing really well and very successful, I might add in a picture, a digital picture, and start pairing it so that they can see what that is.
How many of you have copied these things to like your pages are ripping out, right? These can easily be paired with any of your schedules. If that written word isn't something that you want paired, but you'd like to put in a 2D representation of the sign that you use in your classroom, copy them. Attach that as your icon. And so these are just another option for you, is grab your sign dictionaries. I brought them with me today in case you all want to add these into your tasks that you're going to create. But make your copies and use the level of language. You guys are language experts. You're deaf educators. It's what you do. You're language experts. So hang your hat on your expertise and go with it. I do want to talk, did you guys see that object schedule? With the actual spoon, the cup, the crayon, that's an object schedule. where they physically would touch that schedule. Obviously, if you have a deaf-blind student, we start with object.
What I typically do is I get a pencil carrier and I have all of the different objects in that schedule inside of the pencil carrier, not a little index card. And then I have a Velcro that attaches to the top of it, and I'll walk to the student and I will present them with the schedule. This is his schedule. They'll take it off. May need some assistance.
I need assistance.
And then they can take this and match it to the area. And I'll have another green Lego somewhere in the area where that student is supposed to be matching it to. And so they take that object, and we're going to talk about the significance of what the object is to the student. But they match the object. The really important thing to do, though, is in your little box is to make sure that you have a list of what this object means, because if you have a substitute or a new person in your classroom and they come in and somebody's saying, here's the student schedule, who knows what this Lego means? Is this play? Does this mean a different center? Or what does this actually mean? So it's really important to make sure that you have your list of objects specified out in multiple locations so people know what these items actually are representative of.
I know you all have seen these, but here are icon or line drawings. We brought, because we work at a great place, apparently. They sent 6 computers, 2 laminators, and 2 printers today. So if you all need to print any line drawings, we have BoardMaker on every one of these computers so that you can get the icons that you need to go with the tasks that you make today. And so we have this available for you today. I'm assuming that most of you probably have BoardMaker on your computers, but we didn't want you to make tasks. No? Yes, some? Okay, well, use them today. Take it while you can.
Print away.
And if you really want to, there's free trials available, so come see us. We can always help you guys out getting what you need. But these are BoardMaker symbols, line and icon drawings. And then there's the actual BoardMaker software.
Really easy to use.
Here's an example of the way that those work. This would be an icon versus a picture versus the object. Those are the kinds of things you want to think about. Tying on your expertise, just think about language development. If you wonder right now, where is my kid in level of abstraction? Think about what we know about typical language development. Where's your kid in terms of present levels on language development? So in language development, kids first understand those actual items, right?
A tangible item.
A kid knows what a cookie is before they ever tell you what a cookie is, right? So actual items first, and then they start to get concrete representations. The box of the cookies is now meaningful. So when you go down the grocery store aisle, your life is now hell because they've gotten to this level, right? And then they're going to be able to move on to a picture tied with these weird looking things, i.e. print, and then they'll be able to move beyond that. So think about where your kid is in language to help you assess that level of abstraction for where your student should be. Make sense? Yeah? Excellent. Object schedules?
Most
I keep
appropriate.
standing in front of the thing. Sorry.
We forgot our clicker. So most appropriate for students who do have limited language abilities, because that concrete item is there, it doesn't go away, and we can use it for matching. So it's a great tool, a great activity to begin with. Obviously it's representative by the actual object as we showed you. I'll let you talk about this because this was something that was really exciting you learned about.
I get excited
It's really
all
cool.
the time. So one of the things, I was just granted a great opportunity to do some writing with Susan Bruce. And I don't know if that name means anything to you all. It didn't to me originally, but Susan Bruce is one of the leading researchers in deaf blindness. And she's just incredible to have conversations with. She kind of blows your brain open all the time. And we were talking about object schedules recently, and she said, you know, the thing that I see the most people mess up on with object schedules is that we're adults. And we perceive the world through our own what's important and what's not important. But our students, whether they have autism or whether they're deaf-blind, may have a referent that would be completely different than what we would think. So she said to me that she went into a classroom recently of a child that's deaf-blind, and the teachers had put an object schedule in place. And the object that they chose for the playground, what would you all pick for an object for the playground? I'm sorry?
Oh, is this like the icon or what you're
No,
An
like
object.
for an object schedule. What do you think like a ball maybe? Maybe the little dollhouse, like slide thing. Maybe the swings, wood chips.
Rubber chip.
Excellent. Okay, so they had like a chain link, because they thought, well, kids like to swing, so I'm going to put a chain link on there. And in 3 minutes, she knew that they had chosen the wrong referent, because that child didn't like to swing. That child only liked to play in the sandbox. So something very unexpected happened to that teacher, that now you had to make your own sandpaper with actual, like, legit sand and glue, and that was the object for playground. But no one would have ever guessed that. When you have to make that object schedule, it can't be your referent.
It needs to be something that's meaningful to the student.
If they never drink milk in a carton, don't make milk in a carton the lunch icon for an object, right? So you really have to spend time. If you have kids on an object schedule, following that kid through their day and come up with what they have self-selected as their referent for their schedule. Otherwise, you've given something to them that is absolutely meaningless.
And that's really easy to do because we spend so much time observing and watching our students. So when they're out on the playground, watch and look at what it is that they're doing and playing with. When they're in the center area, what are they doing at that center, and use that item. So you're going to choose things that have meaning to the student. Moving on.
I'm trying
Just
to move.
lots of different examples. And this is
clicking.
another thing, an object schedule can be used, but also when working with kids with autism who need that very concrete levels, we'll start off teaching communication skills using an object, not going to that icon first, because an object is going to be very meaningful for them. Oh, here's that list I was talking about of what you need to put in there so that everybody knows what those items look like.
And another one, sorry.
Photo.
There's many pictures.
Lots of different pictures. Here's that fold over schedule I was just talking about, where you have the schedule listed, and then when an activity is finished, you can have the student walk over and close it, meaning it's done. And we have a lot of kiddos who need to see it gone, closed, bye-bye, activities done before they can move on to the next one. Other students just need to pull it off the Velcro, put it on the back, or put it in an envelope that's all done. Lots of different ways that you can use to cross off activities. Here's one where they would match.
Sorry, I went
No,
too
you're
fast.
fine. No, it's fine. We've already talked about lots of ways you can display them. They can be horizontal or vertical.
This is some of that pairing that Nikki was talking about, where you'll put the icon matched with words, because we want to eventually move as many kids as possible onto Word, right?
How many of you guys are familiar with Carly Fleischman? She is an individual who has an autism spectrum disorder. She's very, very impacted. She didn't actually begin talking until she was 12 years old, and she began typing on a computer. That was her communication. And so this is one of the things that they helped to do for her is they would write down lists of what something meant for her.
schedules can also just be in a binder, itinerant teachers who live out of your trunks.
They can just be written for students that would work for.
Or on a marker board.
We have a few of those laying around.
We do have some of those laying around that you guys can pick up. Here's just another, check it off when it's all done. I need to mark things. How many of you add things to your to-do list just so you can mark them off?
Can never have an empty to-do list.
I get ya.
The other cool thing is, once you find a schedule that works in the school, it's really nice to be able to take them and talk to parents and families and find out if that type of same system would be very helpful at home. Because if it's a system that the student is successful with at home, we want to make sure that we're sharing those same strategies so that parents can, help teach that skill at home too.
So pull-off is very common, and check-offs are common. That's it's more abstract, less concrete. And then we have already talked about this, but stationary versus portable in terms of considerations.
So there's lots of different ways that you can indicate to your student that it's time to check your schedule. One of the most intrusive ways is a verbal instruction, because when we think of that prompt hierarchy, one of the hardest prompts to fade is a verbal instruction. So we want to do as little verbals as we can. So there's lots of different ways that we can indicate it's time for the student to check their schedule. We can hand them a check schedule card, which would indicate that they would need to go and find their schedule and find out what activity is next. It could just be a written schedule where they have the same need that most of us have, where they have to cross it off to see what is next. And that one, actually the pencil that was in that was the student's transition. So when the teacher would walk up, it was a pencil that had, or a pen that had a certain color tape that was the same color of the notebook. That was the indicator to the student that they needed to check their schedule. So as the teacher might be saying to check your schedule, she would walk up to the student and just hand them the pen, and then the student would know that that was time to check a schedule.
You guys saw that stationary one with all the strips. So what we used to do is at the top there was an envelope that was underneath everyone's name. And so I would just have pockets full of names, and I would hand you your name on a yellow card and your name on a pink card, and then you would know to go and check your schedule. And so it reduced that verbal prompt, which is very difficult to fade, and put it into a more concrete.
It's a habit. We always say think duct tape, not for the students, but for ourselves, because it's so hard to stop talking. And we don't even realize that we're talking sometimes. There's a lot of schedule apps that I've used in classrooms using the technology. Technology is such a huge thing right now, when there's some really awesome apps out there that are great schedules. So if anybody wants any more information on those, come talk to me later.
And prompting and fading, I know you all have talked about prompt hierarchies before, but if you want any further information on ways that you can think about your prompt and how to fade that, then we would love to talk with you about that some more. But we are going to go ahead and move on to work systems. Woohoo! And show you all some of those.
So here's just a nice picture of what a classroom environment would look like. And how a work system or independent work system could be set up within a classroom. So obviously there's lots of different places that this could fit, but some of the components that you need to have is a space that, dependent on your student's level of distraction, would be a good location for a student to be able to complete their tasks in an area that's independent. I do a lot of these trainings over the summer, and we talk about minimizing distractions. And so we use what we have when we go into schools and set these structures up. And sometimes students have very high levels of distractibility, and so we will use some barriers to hopefully block out whatever's going on in an environment. So we'll move some bookcases, and we'll create like a little nookie area for that student to minimize whatever it's going on. We'll face them towards a wall if everything in the background is too much. And so one of my jobs was to go out to the classrooms of teachers who went through those trainings. And so we were going to follow up on a student who had been through the training, as had the teacher, and he was a student that had a high level of distractibility. And when we walked into the classroom, we were very intrigued because there was almost like a hutch from somebody's house that they had brought in, some really tall filing cabinets, and a shower curtain rod that went from cabinet to cabinet, and a shower curtain. And so when it was time for independent work, it was almost like a little area that he went into. She took the minimizing distractions to the furthest extent I've ever seen, because to be able to see what the student was doing in there, you had to walk around the filing cabinet, and there was the mirror that was on the hutch, or the side of the hutch. There was like a 2-inch little area that you had to peek in to see what it was that he was actually doing in there. And so we actually had created probably more of a problem because we had blocked out too many distractions, because is that anything that you're going to find in a natural environment? No. We want to do the best that we can based on the students' needs to minimize distractions. So that might be an area of the classroom off where there's not as many students. It might be a corner, it might be somewhere where you might need a bookcase that is, hip level to minimize some of the distractions. But you really have to take a look at the need of the student. Some students may not have any big level of distraction, so they could do their work, independent work, at a desk. So it really depends on your student and how much distraction it is that they really need. We also have worked with a student who was in a very intense ABA program. Are you guys familiar with what that is? He had one-on-one instruction for lots and lots of years, probably from preschool up until I think about 2nd grade, when we decided that we needed to get him out of his ABA room. And so it took an entire year of us putting in a schedule of introducing distraction. And that started with opening the closet door that he and his paraprofessional had been sitting in for the multiple years. And it took 1 year to be able to get that door open and him working in the pod that was outside of his classroom, not even in his classroom. So it was almost like we had created a monster because we had, taken away so many distractions in his environment.
And those physical structures that are in place are also part of the teach system that we talked about at the very beginning. So if you look at the teach system, which is a structured teaching system, it starts with setting up your environment.
There's 4 different components. There's the physical environment, there are visual schedules, which we talked about, there's the work systems, and then there's teaching routines. And so we're today highlighting the schedule component and the independent work systems, but the structure of how you set up your classroom is also really important.
Because then they can clearly see where to go to do their work.
Another good example. We showed you a couple of pictures, but this shows with labels what it is that what that independent work system might look like. Again, it has that task organizer, mini schedule, with the icons that the student can match to the different activities, and then a location where they can put that work. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that laundry basket. It could be a teacher basket if your student's able to get up and travel across the room. If there's a t-shirt basket on a file, on a desk. And it could be used for all students. So this is where completed work goes. If it's a work or a job-related activity, which has a few more components to it, then that might be a different location. And so those are all things that you can teach as you're teaching the work system.
And you can do something as simple as every student has a different colored folder, and their work goes into their folder when they're done. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that you can individualize these systems.
I had one teacher, I'm going to grab something over here, who had one of these for each of her students. And so within this box, she had 4 or 5 folders, and she would have work in each one of those. And then her task organizer would say, do folder 2, do folder 3, and 5. And the student would get in here, pull that out, do their work, and then put it back in the teacher all done area. So there's lots of different ways that you can structure these systems for the different levels of students that you're supporting.
Okay, we've talked about this a little bit, but remember that these systems tell your students 4 things. And so we're acronymed because we're special educators.
So another one for you is SADN.
Yeah, it'll tell you
Where to start,
the amount of work, when it will be done,
and what's
and
next.
what's next. So that is what you want to be sure is included in your system. And it's going to look very different for students. It could be simple or complex, concrete or abstract. And it has to align with the skills of the student using the system. So you have to really look at where that student is at. And here are
Some different
other
examples. This is a system where there's actually like 6 different desks. So she'll have 2 desks for one activity, one where and this is a stationary activity, so the activity stays on that desk for the student to do it, and when they're done, they just slide it to that red paper where it says done. Then they move to the next desk, which is over here, complete the activity, move the task to done, and then they come over to the next desk. So it's kind of like a horseshoe shape, and they do their activity and slide it. This next picture is where they have the desks that have the little shelf up above, and so the student will take the activity, and we have the student needed a little additional structure. And so there was some tape that we used as a boundary, so they would take their activity, pull it down on top of that area that had already been pulled out, do their activity, and then I think there was a basket that they would put it in, or sometimes they'll just put it back up when it's finished. It's based on your students' needs. And the task organizer is right here, so it would match. I don't know if this is a color match or a picture match or a number match, but they'd take it and put it up there, Velcro it up there, do it, and then put it back. And then this last one is very similar to a system like this, where it's a 3-tiered, just a tray, where you could say folder 1 or activity 1, activity 2, activity 3, and you would have the work already set in here for the student to do, and then they would probably go and put it in a teacher basket, come back, complete activity 2, activity 3. And it's really cool when you teach the system like that, but the student catches on, and they're like, why am I getting up and walking and putting it in the teacher basket after each activity, when they can complete all 3 tasks and then put it in. So the students start figuring out the system and how to become more independent and how to make it more functional for them. So it's really cool to see once they get it. Mm-hmm. You know what, I usually do 3. And the reason I do 3 is because we want to teach them to independently go from activity to activity. And so that's a really good thing to bring up, because the tasks, when I'm first teaching and introducing a work system, the tasks that I have in that system I'm not worried about what the work is. It might be the easiest thing ever. If a student knows how to write their name, I might just have a line and a pen there and say write name. It's not about the work initially that you want the student to do. It's about going through the 3 steps independently. Then we can start adding in the work and bumping up the level of work, the hardness and degree of work. It's about the student going through the 3 activities independently. We want independence. We can always bump up the level of work, but we want to make sure that they're using the system, that the system that is in place is working for that student so that they are becoming independent going through those activities. Does that make sense?
But once they know 3, what if a job site has 6 things they're supposed to do in a rotation or something like that?
Then you can bump it up. At that, I mean, if the student is able to. You don't want to keep adding activities and cause anxiety or stress. But it also might be when you're going through those systems, you only have them do certain components of it and start then adding length to it.
But if I'm correct, you're also working with some older students, is that correct? And so if you know that the goal is to get them to go to their job site and be able to do something that's over 3 steps, I would introduce a longer schedule just so that they understand that it's not 3 and done, because you're just introducing more rigidity by doing that. And so with some of my really rigid older kids that were okay with the system, I wouldn't have a consistent number every day.
But not only that,
3, some days it was 5, some days it was 4. Remember, this is independent work, so you also don't want them sitting at this desk for an hour.
they're going to do those 3 activities, and then they're going to go on to the next task. And then you're going to have an opportunity, you know, 2 hours later that they're going to go back into independent activities, and you're going to have different activities set up. So there's going to be lots of opportunities throughout the day that they're able to go into that independent work system and then do the work again. Water.
Here's just some examples, just pictures of different things that have been tasks that are in there. Again, it's not about the work.
Oh, and this is really important because this is for a classroom that supported a lot of early childhood kids. And so one of the really big skills that we have to teach and focus on, foundation skills for anything, are play skills. And play is a very difficult concept to teach sometimes. And so we have to think about, how can we structure up a play activity so that a student can be successful? And so you can do that and at least teach the skill in direct instruction, then they can do it on their own in independent, and then we've even added it in where in independent we might have them go initiate and ask a friend to come play so that it's done independently.
And of course, academic tasks and things like counting money. You see, it doesn't have to be this I'm sorting crayons kind of idea. It can be as much as here's the shopping list, count your money out for that.
And I have different examples here where they can sort. You can put pennies, nickels, dimes. They can match it. You can also do pair it with touch money, so you can teach touch money with it. So there's lots of different ways that you can teach some of these skills, and you guys are welcome to come up here. We'll go through some of this stuff, but during lunch, if you get done a little bit earlier, I'd love for you to come up and just look at some of the different examples. These have all been used in independent work systems.
And things like file folder games, you'll see some of them over on this other table that are clocks. So you set the clock and then they have to say, put on there, what time is it? I mean, very, very functional skills. You can get very functional. Again, this reiterates the concept that Nikki was just talking about, that we actually have to teach and work on play skills. I hope you all are thinking about that all the time, but leisure skills are not just outside of the classroom. We actually have to teach those skills to kids with that deficit area.
And it's something that we often forget to do because we're so focused on everything else that we have to teach.
And then they're 22 and they go to a structured workshop during the day and they go home.
And they have no hobbies.
And so we really have to start leisure and hobby conversation at a much younger age than we tend to do that.
Or
we tend to wait till they're 17, 18 and then we're in a panic.
Or what also I see frequently is I'm walking into a high school and some of their leisure activities are not necessarily age appropriate. They like listening to music, however it might be Barney, so how can we shape that so that they're listening to age appropriate music? And so this is another way that we can do that.
Okay, so we're gonna, do you have examples of these here that you want to show?
I have a jig.
So here are just some of the ways that you can do concrete presentation. You can do jigs similar to this.
Well, this is a higher level one, but this would just be matching. I mean, a jig is literally the first step would be like a put in. So it might be a bucket, like I use coffee buckets with the plastic, I cut a little hole in, and I might have to physically prompt when I'm teaching in direct instruction for the student to pick up and put in. So very simple tasks, foundational tasks that you can use jigs for. Are any of you guys familiar with the Task Galore books? I forgot mine. I don't know how I forgot them.
So it's called Tasks Galore.
And there are 4 of them now.
Yeah.
There is the newest one focuses on teaching play skills, and then there's it focuses on literacy skills, hygiene, grooming, and then there's an adult one. And so they're color coded for the different skill that they're teaching, but Google it. They are absolutely wonderful books. I wish I would have brought mine for you to look at.
We're actually ordering them currently to be in the ISRC library, so
Woohoo!
we'll soon be able to check them out from there.
Yeah, they are wonderful books.
So these are just some pictures of some of those.
Good examples.
Concrete.
And what you'll notice, a lot of these are all teacher-made activities. And I think for most of these, we've got cardboard boxes. If this is an activity that you think a student that you're supporting would benefit from, there's colored blocks, foam blocks over there. There's tons of containers. These are all examples of things that you guys could take and make today. This is one that I loved because it showed, I mean, this was a student who needed a lot of structure. So they would come over, start with green, match it, pull it down, do it, put it in. And then what you'll notice is at the end, when we talk about what's next, so at the end of every single work system, there is an icon or some indicator of what it is the student needs to do next. So for this student, they'll take that icon and they'll match it to, so it might be go to the leisure area, go to the computer. So that lets the student know what it is that they're supposed to be completing next.
And mine was almost always check schedule.
Could have been check schedule.
So that they go, because I was teaching that routine of going back and seeing that referent because my kids needed to know and they needed to move back to that schedule area throughout their day.
For some kids who need high levels of reinforcement, we'll also put some type of, if it's an edible reinforcer, can you go back to the page before? In between activities.
Maybe.
We can also put an edible reinforcer, or if it's a little toy, sometimes it's hard to get away from the stimming component. So we'll put in an activity that definitely has a clear beginning and a clear end that's very short in between activities, so they get that reinforcement built in, and then they might get a larger reinforcer after completing all 3 tasks. Here's other ones. This is a matching. The activities aren't here, but the schedule, the task organizer, you can see there's Velcro spots. Well, you might not be able to see, but there's Velcro spots on the desk. And so the student, it's actually a Lego that has a character on it. And so the student will take that Lego and match it to the shelf, and there's an activity on the shelf, take it to the desk, complete it at the desk, and then there's another shelf on the other side where they put all of their activities when they're done.
So here are some, oh, that picture is horrible.
Well, I think I might have this one. So for students that you might have doing a lot of paper pencil tasks, what I've done is I'll label it on the outside folder 1, folder 2, folder 3, and then on the inside of the folder, there's almost like a little task analysis of what it is they're supposed to do. So it'll say, take out work, do work, put work in folder, put folder in all done teacher basket. So this tells them what they're supposed to do. Apparently we were working on ocean zones and he had to label them. And so he would complete it, put it back in here and put it in the teacher basket, and then he would go on to his next folder, which pretty much has the same instructions, do worksheet, put worksheet in folder. And so this he was working on, I have no idea, something way more than I remember doing in high school. So another thing that you can do is again, sometimes the purpose is not making sure that the student can do so much work. So you may not have time for the student to do a full sheet of the worksheet, so you can X out, or you can put another piece of paper on top, or just highlight the questions that you want them to do. And so you can adapt the level and the amount of work within that system. So here's a matching work system. So this would be a number color match. There's a picture up here with yellow, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's some more examples. So that's what the Lego one was. There was a character on each one that he would match to. This was just little dots. It was a flip system. Here's different bins.
So that's a number match system.
And that could be a number matches for different students. So you might have different tasks, different level of tasks in those different bins, but you might have the same work area. So you might rotate your students in and out, but their task organizer might look a little bit different. So you might have the green, one student has the blue schedule, one student has the green schedule, and you have taught them that those are the activities that they would go and select.
And we used to just have a whole shelf with multiple tasks on it, and we were able to move our kids to, you know, number 23, number 14, and we would select the task that we wanted them to complete, but then we could switch that out for kids throughout the day. So everyone's schedule looked very different, but my area only had to be set up in the morning. Also very important to protect your all's time and energy. So
first, you always want to teach that activity in direct instruction. So you want to make sure that you never put a skill in that work system that you haven't taught priorly. So you want to make sure that they've done the skill, they know the skill, that it's actually at a maintenance level, that they're doing it pretty independent, so that when you're working one-on-one with them, they show you that they have attained that skill. You also want to make sure your prompting levels, that you have a definite hierarchy of prompts that you're using, and that you're not creating you know, that dependence monster, that you really are focusing on using the least amount of prompt so that that student is successful. And always avoid verbals. And that's another thing. As the student is becoming more proficient doing it, you're going to want to back yourself away and increase that space so that they have an opportunity to do it independently. And when they're in that independent work area, the one thing that you don't want to do is hover. You don't want to be that helicopter that's hovering over. You want to make sure that the student's doing it. And guess what? They're going to make mistakes. And how are you going to know they make mistakes? Because when they put that work in all done, they don't take it apart. They don't reset it. It's the teacher. So you're looking at that permanent product to see what it is, and that's how you can take your data. But you look at that activity, and if you see, oh, they missed the boat on this one, what are you going to do? Pull it back out and reteach it in direct instruction. Maybe it is that they need a little bit more support. So how can you restructure that same activity so that they have the support that they need, the structures that they need, so that they can be successful?
And this is just an example of, I think you guys put this in a classroom, that near the paraprofessionals station where she would work with students, and near the independent work system, that there's a little reminder about the prompting hierarchy. We used to keep the prompting hierarchy very visually shown in our room. Because it's very easy to over-prompt.
And we always are very good at wanting to use our voice and to do things for students. And so that was just put in place as a reminder that we need to remember to use the least amount of assistance to get that student to be independent.
So most of these points on this slide, Nikki has already talked about, but you'll set up materials before the child gets there. You will not have the student take them apart so that you can use that for your data.
And you also don't want the student, so if they complete it and you walk over right away, you don't want the student watching you take it apart and set it back up, because you're teaching them that skill. And there's been so many times that I'll see a kiddo take it back out if it's been left there and the teacher can't get to it, and they reset it themselves because they've seen the teacher do that. And so they've learned that skill. And so we want to make sure that they don't see us put everything back together. Even though it could be a help, but we want to make sure we get our data collection.
So I'm going to jump forward to this slide and just show you a list of possible, and the possibilities are endless here, but the types of activities that you could put. We have a million materials that you can use. So first you're going to think about, what kind of system do you think would work? Do you want to do folders? Do you want to use boxes and create bins? Do you want to use bins? Think about your system first. Matching, what kind of system do you want to do? And then after that, you move on to the tasks that you're going to put in that system for your students. And these are just some possibilities. So things as simple as put in matching activities, sorting and categorization, which is something that I did a lot with my deaf students with autism in particular, because categorization is so difficult. Even with vocabulary, categorizing, or if you're using grammar graphics, can they sort their words into the parts of speech? Different things like that.
Category stuff over there.
We spent a lot of time because we did so much direct instruction on that then those became our independent work tasks. Sequencing, patterning, fine motor activities. If you have kids with fine motor delay, this is a great opportunity for them to work on that independently. Tying shoes, we've done many a tie a shoe kind of thing. Academics, to reinforce any academics that you've moved them to independence with. Assembly and disassembly, particularly important for individuals that if you know what their work task is going to be, if you're transitioning them into a work environment, if it involves assembly or disassembly, that's an important task to do.
Or even if they struggle opening their tooth paste. I mean, there's so many different things that are life strategies that they're going to need to learn how to have. So you can put that in an independent activity that they're learning how to open a jar.
And there are all kinds of things. We'll walk over there when we come back from lunch and just kind of show you some examples of some of the possible tasks that you guys can choose from. But one of them is just batteries and a flashlight. Putting batteries correctly in a flashlight. Wow.
Checking to see if they work, because how many times do we have flashlights that don't work, and there's lots of skills that go into that.
Packing things like lunches, office work. So you'll see labels over there with envelopes and paper.
There's labels so you can practice writing out addresses and mailing letters.
I hope you can see
paper
some
for
relevance.
collating.
Collating. Yeah, we did that one a lot of collating. And hygiene might seem a little off, but it's not off. If you've had that student, you know what I'm talking about. Hygiene can be placed within an independent work system for them to practice those skills.
I had one of my junior high teachers that was her students struggled with when they came in the morning. They may have been a little smelly. And so that was the first thing she did that was on their schedule for the day, is go in, brush their teeth, and do all of their grooming stuff so that they were freshened up at the beginning of the day, because that was something that they weren't able to get done in the morning before they came to school. So she had a hygiene system set up from the beginning of the day, and then she did it again to reinforce it at lunch so that they could do teeth brushing, because that's a whole area that's difficult for a lot of students, is brushing teeth.
And I'm going to go DHH on us for a minute. So one of my favorite things is to call your local audiology clinic and get the thrown away ear molds that they couldn't use, and set that up with a blower, get them cleaning out those ear molds, teach them that skill. Why not? Mom and dad shouldn't have to do that the rest of their lives. Teach that skill in direct instruction, and then put old ear molds with a blower and soap in their independent work system. Now you have a functional skill that they can do the rest of their lives. Mom and dad are going to thank you for it. Changing batteries, get old discarded items and use those if you're struggling with those functional skills, being independent with their amplification devices. So that's always a fun one for me.
So how do I choose? How do you know where to begin? Right now you can think of some skills that your students are doing pretty well at, and you want to test out. You want to see if they're fully independent doing it. So that's one thing that you guys can think about now as you're beginning to think about what tasks you'll be creating this afternoon. Have you been teaching a skill that you want to generalize? Because if it becomes more independent, then we know that it's easier to generalize that skill to different people, to different environments. Think of all the different types of not only curriculum-based assessments, but I know we do lots of other types of assessments. So what are your assessments telling you? What's that data tell you? Where are some of the holes? Where are some of the areas that your students are struggling with? That might be an area that you want to target and develop some tasks for. Another thing is skills that require practice. So we know how important repetition is, but once we've taught it, we want to make sure that it can fly independently. So that might be another area that you want to think of to put into an independent work system. And then also things that are really, really motivating. Again, when we first begin, what you guys should really be focusing on today are skills that are really easy for them to complete, and skills that are very motivating. Because at first, when you're introducing a work system, it's not about the work. It's about teaching them to independently do one activity, put it away. go on independently to the second activity, do the work, put it away, transition to that third activity, do the work, put it away, find that transition item, or to go check their schedule and find out whatever activity is next for them. So really it is something that is an easy task for them to complete because you want to teach them the system. You don't want them to get hung up and stressed out about the work that's in that system. We want them to be successful.
Are the skills easier to teach or the independent piece easier to teach when the 3 tasks are related, or is it better to have them unrelated?
It doesn't really matter. I've done related, I've done unrelated. It just is, I choose tasks that are easy, very, very easy, or very, very motivating. So it might be something that is, things that can be done in a very short amount of time. So even if they can do lots and lots of math on the worksheet, I might only put one question on there for them to complete because I know that they know how to do that work. What I don't know is that they can independently go through that system. And so we talk about at first when you're introducing that system that we don't want an adult there. You may, those first couple of times, have to physically prompt the student or gesture what it is that they're supposed to do next. When we come back, one of the first things that we'll pull up, I have a social story that we'll share on how one teacher taught her student about going through those independent work systems. So they can relate, the activities can be related, they don't have to be. It's just something that the student probably could complete independently because it's not about the work at first. Does that answer your question?
And I sometimes specifically try to choose unrelated because if they're all related, by the 3rd task, my students were done with that.
Bored.
I'm done thinking about oceans or whatever you've got in that first task. They're ready to be done with that and move on, and that can mean a cognitive done with that.
So novel could be good for some students. Other students, they get hung up on that because it's like, oh, right. I'm focused on this, now I have to reorient and focus on something else. So it really is dependent on your student and your student's needs, how well you know them, and what you think that they would do.
So while you're thinking with your teams over lunch, we've said this, but you always want to go left to right or top to bottom. When you're thinking about the system itself and how that will work, you want to think about, what do I have here? That it can be stored away from the work area. So the things that they've done, you don't want them running and grabbing their own tasks. That needs to be teacher selected. It needs to be presented very organized. I think that the pictures we've shown you today have shown that. There's no chaos there. It's very organized, and that you want everything that needs to be there has to be there, because if they get in a task and there's not
Which
a material,
actually is a good sabotage at times because you want to make sure that when they're ready, you want to make sure that they're using the communication skills that they have to ask for help. But when we're first teaching, we want to make sure that all pieces are there and nothing is missing, because that can cause a lot of stress and anxiety when the system fails.
And then all these tasks have to be discrete. So they have to have a very clear beginning and a clear end. So I saw I had to undo an issue that happened with a paraprofessional in summer treatment for a child, because the paraprofessional that was working with the student said he loves puzzles. It's like his favorite thing in the world. He would do puzzles 23 hours a day if you would let him. And so she just was so excited. And so she bought him this thing called the never-ending puzzle. It's kind of my worst nightmare of all time, because he didn't want to stop that puzzle ever, and it has to be discrete. They just have to be very clear. It has to be something that is very clear in the beginning and clear in the end, so that they know when it goes into the finish basket. If they can't tell when it's done, then it doesn't need to go into independent work at all.
That might be a good reinforcer for after that they earn 5 minutes to work on that puzzle.
Absolutely. So these are other ideas. It can go in a basket, all done, a bin.
And it kind of depends on what the activity is, because some activities might fit in a teacher basket. Other activities, if it's a jig or a big box like we have over there, it might fit better in an all done area.
And then lastly, you want to do what comes next. You have to have something that goes at the bottom of that schedule, remember? So you want to have, if
That
we go with the
transition
magic
piece.
number of three tasks with your transition at the bottom. So you need to decide what that's going to be to make your system. And I think we're at evaluation.
We can be done. we can evaluate later.
We will talk real quick about evaluation after lunch, show you some tasks, and then you guys get to work. Sound good? Other questions real quick before we move on to going into room 1. What's behind
There
door
really
number
won't be
1?
much more content. When we come back, we'll just have a couple of slides, and then you'll have your afternoon to look through all the different activities that we brought, to hop on the computers, hop on the internet, use all the materials that we have brought over there that we'll talk about, and you can create away and have fun. These are like some of my favorite days when I get to go to Make and Takes, because you get to walk away with something.
Logistically, would the next person coming to that workstation use the same finish basket if I don't have time to get over and
Absolutely. I mean, if it's the tasks are the same type of tasks, you can use that same box.
have to look at it till the end of the day?
No, and what your task your task organizer will look different. So if they're matching, you'll know that, oh, shapes are this student. You'll know if it's numbers, it's this student. So your task organizer will let you know what activity was completed by which student.
And I would specifically order your students, so the one who can't handle, if there's something else in that basket,
Yeah.
always gets to go first, because you're going to know that. You've got some students who are like, I don't care, I'm flexible.
Or if it's a paper pencil task and you're putting in a teacher basket, you'll know, because hopefully they'll remember to put their name on it. So, any other questions?
I can't wait to show you all the stuff we brought.
I hope you're excited to make stuff. It's fun.
So eat lunch. Feel free to peruse these already made tasks that are up here, and we'll show you
Yep.
some stuff after.
All right, we're going to wrap it up, and we're going to talk just a few moments about data, because how do you collect data when you're using work systems? And actually, it's really pretty easy, because the systems that you built, the tasks that you built, are really a permanent product. And so we had talked about, once the student has completed that task, that last step is to put it in a finished area, whatever that area is, a teacher basket, a shelf that's an all done area. And so then what you as a teacher would do is you would go back later at the end of the day and you would take a look at that permanent product, and you can have, there's lots of different types of data sheets, and we will make those available to you so that you can see what different types of data sheets can be used with structured work systems. And you take a look at that information, the permanent product, and that's where you get your data from. And so if you see a student has like an off day and they have done the same task a couple times throughout the day, but they didn't really do it at that 80% or 90% level across multiple times, at least 3 times, then you might want to pull it back out and reteach it. But if they're consecutively doing well after time, then it's a skill that you probably don't need to keep in that system. You can rotate it in and out for an easier task as you introduced more complex or more difficult tasks. And so that's how you collect your data. You just take a look at your permanent product and go from there. Any questions about it? Have any of you who have had systems in place, do you have any good data collection procedures for your work systems? Or is that pretty much how it works? All right, beautiful. So we're going to move on to the second part of our day, which is the fun make it and take it, where we're going to take you back to that little activity that we did this morning, where we asked you as a team to talk about a student that you are supporting or multiple students. And so we again invite you to go back and talk about now an activity or 2 or 3 or some tasks that you would like to develop and walk away with today. So we just want to do a quick introduction to some of the materials that you will see are over here, and then we'll let you come team by team to help yourselves to some of the materials.
And we want to make this very clear that the examples that we're going to say are not what you have to use these materials for. Just when we look at this, this is something that we would use for this activity. But this is really, you have to make this work for your student and whatever skill you're working on. So I'm just going to hold these up so that you all can think amongst your teams to make some decisions maybe before you come over. But there are things like file folders that are color coded that you could use for a sorting task very easily. You could also use these, like Nikki showed before, for your system to have your folders
Folder 1,
numbered.
Folder 2, and Folder 3 within a system.
There are binders here with different numbers, and so this, I'm just thinking about this for our itinerant teachers in particular. If you have several students that you feel like you could put on independent work for paper pencil task, this would be fabulous because you could carry this binder and it would hold 15 different activities in it.
This can also be used for a student in the junior high or high school because this is a very natural support. How many kiddos carry binders around? So it could be a very natural support at the student's desk where you tell your kiddos, you know, get ready and do your work. And then the student who has the work system will just pull this out from their desk or their bag, and it's already built in. So it just adds structure within a support that all students are already using. Could be used for a folder task. I mean, it has a matching task.
Oh,
Lots of different ones.
I don't even know what I'm showing.
Continents and numbers, I think. So these are just little doodads that we picked up that you guys are using. Lots of scissors. If you're going to use Velcro, we'll pull out a couple pairs of scissors that we'll designate as our Velcro scissors, so that we don't get them all sticky, because we all know how fun it is to use Velcro-y scissors.
Just puzzles, different foam puzzles.
Patterning, could be alphabet, lots of different things. Markers, you can do color sorting, you could do highlighting stuff. Envelopes, there's lots of different addressing envelopes, writing a letter, so many different skills. You can do alphabetizing. Oh, there's labels there too. You can use the labels for the bigger envelopes as well. These are one of my favorite things. There's so many different skills that you can teach with these little organizers. You can do alphabetizing, you can do filing. And so there's, I mean, you can do grocery list things. There's tons of different ideas that you can use with these organizers, so there's a bunch of those there. You could have a problem written on an erase board that would stick in a folder or in a box that a student could complete as a part of their system. So many things that you could do with dice. There's, I think, a deck of cards up here somewhere, or I have it over by my stuff that you could snag. You can do math, you can do games. There's so many different things that you can use with that. Index cards to go with the card things somewhere, or these for filing and sorting, alphabetizing.
Hygiene
Can all brush your hair. There might even be a toothbrush, wash rag. Bags you can take to pack your stuff in when you leave if things are small enough that they fit into a Ziploc bag.
I'm personally selected the food items to demonstrate.
You can, you can do, I got these for sorting and stocking shelves, so you could create a shelf out of one of these lovely Sam's boxes and create a task from that.
This is a task,
It's
right?
one of my favorites.
Fix food for
And the
yourself independently.
The coolest thing is that there are already visual directions on it, and so I've used this a lot when I'm teaching a kiddo how to make a snack or lunch for themselves.
This is also a way that you can teach that independent skill. This can also be used as a sorter. I did this a million times, but silverware trays and plastic silverware, perfect for a life skill.
There's lots of different manipulatives that you can use for sorting in here.
We do a lot of sorting for these. This is also something I used a lot with my kids with fine motor problems, pick things up with tweezers and put them in each of these little boxes is actually a very difficult task for many of our students. So there are lots of items you could use that for. You can use these erasers for things like color sorting or assembly. I used to use these for assembly a lot.
There's 1,000,001 uses for pipe cleaners, and I have, I think, beads up there for bead things. I also saw a really cool one recently that was using math, so they had a little tab on here that was like the number 5, and they would have 5 different beads on here, and they would pair it with a flashcard so that the student would have the manipulative right there, and they had like 4 or 5 cards in the system so that they would complete that, and then they would write the number on the bottom.
Different foam sheets for sorting or different kinds of activities that you want to do. We do oftentimes office supply sorting, so thumbtacks, paper clips, rubber bands. I had to look at it. Yeah, wow. Some word finding issues I'm having this afternoon. That potato was way too many carbs for me.
Assembly, and does it work, does it not work? Which is a really functional skill for home too, to make sure all the flashlights are working.
You have a lot of different sorts of bins that you can choose from. Here's a great one. If you ever look up that Kara Hume article or the article in Teaching Exceptional Children on structured work systems, you will see one of the systems is on house cleaning. My child needs one as well, but the house cleaning is an important skill, so you can pick up one of those.
I have a task up front. I mean, clothespins have so many different uses, but I have a number match task that's up on one of the front tables where there's a wheel with different dots, and then they pin the clothespin on that matches the number. While she's getting that, there's lots and lots of duct tape, and duct tape can be used for so many different things. It can be used to help set up different systems with the cardboard boxes. It can be used as an extra visual prompt when you are setting up some of the containers and using the containers. And as we saw on some of the desks in the work system, it could be an extra support or an extra level of structure that is on that work system so that a student would know where to put some of the tasks that they do have to move.
Cookie sheets. I know there's not an itinerant in here who doesn't use cookie sheets. The best magnetic little board in the world. But you can use this for all kinds of magnet activities, or if you need a visual boundary for your students. Small things like Tupperware cups, perfect for sorting by color or by putting whatever you want them to sort into these little cups. There's also other cups that you can use for sorting. So the other thing that I want you all to think about is these front 2 tables have tasks that we've used with kids before. So if you don't want to just jump in and you know exactly what you want to use these materials for, feel free to go and look at some of these activities and then come over, and we're going to be here obviously to help answer questions related. We're not just leaving.
We're not leaving.
To help answer questions about how to set up your system as well.
But you can put your things together, like grab a cup, grab a wash rag, a comb, and toothbrush, and there's a hygiene system that you can set up.
Nick?
Yes.
What do you use these for?
Oh my gosh, check Pinterest. I don't know. I see activities with
Check
paint.
Pinterest. Who knows?
Laundry sorting.
Numbers, laundry sorting. Perfect. Lights, darks, and lights. Perfect.
You can also do a lot of literacy and teaching language things, words, pronouns with all of the different colors. Lots of different options.
Not just a drinking game.
Well, okay, but teaching Pong is a great skill that, you know, high school students would need to know. It will benefit them in the future. Lifelong skill.
Social emotional.
Social emotional, check it off. This actually, what I've done with this is color sorting. I don't know if we have any toothpicks, or we can use pipe cleaners. And I would color this with a marker and they would match color.
It's also really good for fine motor. We used to use things like this all the time with colored golf tees and
yep, stick it in.
You know, they're great for some of your fine motor kids. So
there's a million different things that you could do with all of the different materials here. Feel free, if you brought your own computers, hop onto the internet. We have all of the computers up here. Like we said, we have board maker software, the internet. They are hooked up to printers, but there is a cord we found out that you have to use. Every computer has the printer software, so we'll just have to take turns unplugging the one computer and plugging it into the other computer just to make sure things get printed. In front of the printers is regular copy paper. Behind the printer is cardstock in case you want to print something off that's a little thicker.
We also have laminating sheets and the laminators, so feel free to try and get as close to a finished product today. You're given that opportunity, and so think about your system setup as well as leaving with at least a few tasks in hand that you could implement tomorrow.
I brought a couple of books that are good examples of how you could make different tasks, and so they'll be up at the front if you want to take a look at what those books have to offer as ideas in them. There's also Velcro by the laminators.
And one last thing, I brought the sign dictionaries, so if you all wanted to pair your system with a 2D image of the sign, Nikki knows of an app. I never know anything related to technology, but what's the name of the app?
It's TinyScan, and you can use, if you have, it's on an Android and it's on the iPhone. TinyScan, you can use the free version, and it is a wonderful app to scan something. So I use it for any document that I want to get a quick copy of that I don't have a scanner available. You just hold it over, snap a picture. It actually will save it as a JPEG or a PDF, and then you can email it to yourself, open it up, and print it. So TinyScan is a wonderful app.
TinyScan, is it TinyScan? Like
done.
like little bitty.
I love it. It's a great app.
As in little bitty.
So what questions do you have?
Everything we have is on these two tables, and if all 52 of you run, it's going to be a little bit like Lollapalooza. And so we're going to mediate that a little bit, and we promised the person that drove the farthest today that they could go first. And so I think what we'll do is we'll go in order by table or by team, just so that you all can come over here. Please, while people are over here, feel free to jump on the computers, look at those tasks, ask us questions, and now we make and then you take. But hold, Steve held up his hand at me.
We also have 2 new dessert trays over here.
Steve says, keep eating, keep eating. All right, thank you, have fun.
Let us know if we can help.
One.
Yeah, usually I have wood and things, but...
No.